I'm Indira Lakshmanan of Bloomberg News, filling in for Emily Rooney. Marian Ryan didn't campaign to be Middlesex County District Attorney. Governor Deval Patrick appointed her to that post in April of last year after Jerry Leone stepped down. Now, just 16 months later, Ryan, a career prosecutor, is on the campaign trail for the first time, seeking a full term in a contested primary. And she's also running on the heels of the high-profile Jared Remy murder case, which ended with a guilty plea and an independent review of her office's handling of the case. Ryan released the findings of that review back in May, but we learned last week that she held back 19 pages. Tonight, Marian Ryan is here to discuss that decision and much more. Welcome to Greater Boston. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
We found out that critical information about Jared Remy's past, his very violent behavior with a number of women in different Massachusetts towns, was not known to your prosecutors at the time of his hearing regarding his beating up of his girlfriend. What do you think went wrong?
Well, one of the pieces of information that it would have been helpful to know that could not at that time have been known because it wasn't contained on an individual's Board of Probation record was the information that in a previous case someone had been held by the court following a dangerousness hearing. There just was no way for that to be noted on someone's Board of Probation record. Since the time of this incident last summer, some very good, very strong domestic violence legislation, which I had a hand in drafting pieces of, testified in favor of pieces of, has passed the Massachusetts legislature. And it contains, among other provisions, a provision that now requires that when an individual has a case, the court holds them. That will be noted on the individual's probation record.
No matter which jurisdiction it is.
So long as it's in Massachusetts.
So that means this won't happen again. Going forward, this problem has been solved.
That particular problem of a prosecutor doing a bail argument not knowing that, we believe, has been corrected.
I want to understand, though, whether in Jared Remy's particular case, had he not been the son of a famous father, had he been a person of color with a rap sheet, would he have already been behind bars? Is it a case of favoritism in a sense?
Obviously, we deal in a prosecutor's office, in a courtroom, with the facts that are before us. So what we know and what the independent review helped us to look at was the facts about this particular case, the record that this defendant had, the length of time, the span of time of those convictions, other pieces of information that were presented to the court on that day.
The investigation that you commissioned of the handling of this case presents really a picture of a good faith effort by everyone involved to try to do the right thing. And yet you decided to hold back 19 pages. Why do that?
The report of the independent review that was done produced a report that was in various stages, several different pieces. So when we received the report in December, we immediately released one portion of that report, which was the executive summary, gave an outline of the work that had been done. In that point, the case was still open and pending, so we released that piece. When the defendant pled guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison in May of this year, following that plea, I released the findings section of that report. There were several other sections of that report, several other appendices, lists of cases.
But also the individual interviews. I mean, you held back 19 pages more than was actually released. So doesn't that fly in the face of the spirit, if not the actual letter of the open records law, which is meant to give transparency in government?
It had nothing. My release of the findings of that report was done voluntarily. It was not done in response to a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act request, because that would have triggered different considerations. So
even though there had been a previous FOIA
that had been resolved. Once a FOIA has been ruled on, that ends that FOIA. So that had been done during the pendency of the case. That was resolved. Had someone else filed a different FOIA, we would have dealt with that piece of it. With respect to the independent review, the purpose of that review, and it's important, and you mentioned a political situation. It's important that we not lose sight of what happened here. A woman died. A young woman, a daughter, a mother, lost her life. And my goal at that point, following this incident, was to find out what had happened so that the legacy of that woman, Jennifer Martell, would become that we would do all humanly possible to ensure that that situation didn't happen again. So the purpose of that independent review was to have all of the individuals in my office connected with that case speak candidly, freely, without any concern for what they might say, and find out what it was that really had happened.
And you're trying to do some creative things to prevent a case like this from happening again. Let's talk about the initiative that your office is spearheading in cooperation with the police. It just rolled out last week in Melrose, training hairstylists, massage therapists to try to identify victims of domestic violence.
I love this program. It's called our Cut It Out program. I brought it to Middlesex County in 2009. It is based on the theory that many victims, be they male or female, but primarily female in this circumstance, who will not disclose to any traditional law enforcement source, do disclose the fact that they are in danger in a violent situation to their hair salon or hair or salon professional. And there's a number of reasons for that. One is that people frequently establish very long-term relationships with those individuals. They may know them longer than they know their current husbands or boyfriends. Also, many of the injuries that we see almost uniquely in domestic violence cases, while they might not be visible to you or I as we sit here, are visible to a salon professional working on a person.
So it gives them a chance to go to authorities and share that information or encourage the woman to do so.
Yeah, that's right.
Let me ask you something else. You've been criticized about your management style. I want to read a portion of July 26 Boston Globe article citing critics who say that you, quote, put politics ahead of a sound prosecutorial policies because of a fear of media scrutiny and create a demoralizing workplace and are accused of yelling at subordinates. Apparently dozens or even scores of your employees have resigned this year. Some of them have actually come out against you and for your opponent. Do you think there's anything you need to work on in the workplace?
I think that there are a couple of issues. One of which is in terms of the people that leave our office. The number and the percentage of turnover in our office really doesn't vary from past years or from across the state. One of the reasons for that, and one of the ways in which I've been a leader in speaking about to that, is the salaries that we're able to pay people. We bring people into the office with a lot of responsibility, like in these bail decisions, and we ask them to work very hard, and we're able to offer them a starting salary of $37,500.
So you think it's less about the workplace culture and more about the salary issue?
You know, with respect to this incident, have I very much wanted to find out what it is we needed to do differently, to put different things in place, to put things in place that some people might disagree with? Yes, that's true. And to that extent, I hold myself to a very high standard. I hold the people in my office to a high standard. This is serious work that we do.
So it's something you're going to continue to work on. Governor Deval Patrick's office said that you were thoroughly vetted before he appointed you and that you were portrayed favorably, quote, during that process. Do you still have the confidence of Governor Patrick?
I do. I'm happy to say that I do.
You're in of course, a contested Democratic primary with a longtime politician who has deep roots in Cambridge and Middlesex. Why should Middlesex voters choose you over Michael Sullivan?
I bring an amazing combination of skills to this job. One is the experience, having done this job for over 34 years, and it is a job that you can't read in a book. You can't call someone else up at 2 o'clock in the morning and ask them how to do it. There's that piece. The second is the commitment to the work that we do. I have a decades-long history of working with victims, working not just on particular cases, but in the appellate process, in the legislative process, of really understanding this work. And thirdly, I have an equally long record of innovative and creative programs and solutions, such as the Cut It Out, being able to bring stakeholders to the table. I'm fortunate to serve as Massachusetts' only female district attorney. That's an important voice to have heard at the table, especially when you consider the unfortunate reality that the vast majority of victims of crime, particularly violent crime, tend to be women and children.
Marian, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.